Welcome back to howtoav.tv. We're over at ISE 2024 over in Barcelona, and I've been joined today by Emmanuel Daniel from ALOSANAR, who's flown in all the way from Seattle. Emmanuel, welcome to How to AV. Really good to have you on board. We've stolen you almost straight out of your seminar, talking really about what we've learned about making buildings smarter over the last 10 years. So, Emmanuel, let's roll all the way back first of all. And what do we mean by the concept of a smart building?
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. A smart building is any building that is able to use data and use that data to be able to optimize the performance of the building, drive efficiency, drive optimization. But really smart buildings that we're getting into now are those buildings that can optimize the environment so that the humans that occupy it are able to perform better than what they usually could.
So let's try and make this physical in a way. We are surrounded by some of the best technology that you're going to see in the world over at ISE here. So can we kind of apply some of the technologies that we're seeing here and how they assist in making a building smarter, first of all?
Buildings in the past were designed for basic purposes. You have a building because you want security. You have a building because you need a place to live, work, and play. But now buildings are designed to drive engagement. That's what we call accidental collisions. If you want to know something, find something, the best way to do it is to speak to somebody else. So the environment in the building is conducive for you to learn, for you to adapt, and for you to engage. And when you talk about technology, buildings have a lot of technology to begin with. But using assets, devices, and sensors to help you find what you want, to create the environment with light, sound, air quality, so you are the best version of yourself is what the technology is that we're using to drive that engagement that people need.
And we were talking a little bit earlier on about the different types of, if you like, a smart building. And I guess in residential, for the home, we're used to talking about home automation and smart buildings for the home. But now we're talking more about smart buildings, and if we talk about commercial buildings and we talk about apartment blocks and how they're managed by the property developer, but also now more and more we're also using the phrase smart cities as well. And I guess how do those three compare and how do they differ?
Oh, that's a great question. The basic commonality with all three is the need to engage the human. How do you drive engagement of the human involved? The forms and types of engagement is what is going to distinguish each of them. If you go to an office building, it's all about how do I work collaboratively so that I can boost innovation by working with my colleagues. If you go to a school, it's about how do I create the optimum learning environment so students can stay focused and they can stay connected. If I go to a city, it's all about how can I stay connected to the citizens of my city so I can understand their needs and want and be able to provide for that. Now, through that engagement is where we're going to identify the various types of services. At home, what do we care about at home? Is my home secure? Is my home efficient? Okay, am I able to hear if someone comes outside, rings the doorbell? How comfortable is the temperature of my house? Okay, if I go to the office, okay, it's about, hey, have my friends come into work today so I can go and have lunch with? Hey, I want to have an innovative brainstorming session. Could I set up the room in a way that's going to facilitate that? If I go to a hospital, how clean is the quality of air with all the people coming in and going out? And, is there a way for me to be satisfied going in? I won't catch new bugs when I come out. So same styles of engagement, but the engagement starts to vary across all of the sectors. And that's what makes it a smart hospital, a smart university, a smart school, or a smart building.
So, Emmanuel, I guess ultimately, would you say that a smart building will ultimately start with a specification of that building? And can we say now that making a building smart has become an expectation and it's now the normal rather than a buzzword, if you like?
To make a building smart, you always start with the humans that are going to occupy that building. Depending upon the human, each person has their different needs. Students at a school have a different need, patients in a hospital have a different need, and so do office workers. Understanding who the occupants of the building are would start to define the experiences. Using the experiences, you then identify the data needed to enable these experiences, and that data would then dictate the devices, and that devices would give you the specification. The challenge that we see is everybody thinks that a building is just a building. but a building should be designed around the humans that occupy that building. So experiences would lead to specifications. And I think the other part of the question is, buildings should be made smart from the ground up. And when we started, there was a huge drive and focus on sustainability and efficiency. Nobody walks into a building thinking the lights won't work. Nobody walks in thinking the air conditioning won't work. It's a given. So as we start to progress down the journey, there will be basic services that will be outdated. There will be new services that will become basic services. And the continuous cycle of delighting the human, the needs that you and I have are going to be very different from what our kids would have, right? And that evolution will continue. That's why space is personal to the human that occupies it.
And evolution is really important as we now move on to, you were going to tell us everything that we've learned in the last 10 years, and things must have moved on so quickly. You know, I've been in the industry 30 years. Things have moved on exponentially. In the last 10 years, of course, things are speeding up and speeding up. So where were we 10 years ago? Was it then a buzzword? Did it matter? And now is it something that everybody is considering as we should?
So to start with, buildings have gone through a huge, long journey by themselves. When we first started with building controls, it was all about pneumatic controls, basically using air to modify the controls of the building. Pneumatic controls led to electrical controls. Electrical controls led to digital controls. With digital controls came the advent of tons and tons of data. Then we started saying, hey, we have all this data. How do we make the building efficient? Because it's all about savings. It's all about optimization. Then all of a sudden we realized, you know what? People don't appreciate the amount of effort I put into making the building efficient because they don't understand it and they don't see it. You know, for example, the lighting here. You don't worry how efficient the lights are. You don't walk in thinking, oh, is that an LED bulb out there? How efficient could that be? Your requirement is, I need light to do my work, and that light is just the light that I need. Now, with that coming in, people start to lose a sense of appreciation of what the building is. Now, all of a sudden, we've said people have demands and needs where they say, hey, I need the temperature, I need the noise, I need the touch and feel to be at a certain level so I can be the best version of myself. And that's where buildings have gone from a place to provide shelter, a place to be safe and secure, to a place that collects data, to now using that data to make the space work for me rather than me working for the space. And that's the evolution that they've gone through. As we progress into the future, I would say that buildings would adapt automatically to the needs of the human that walks into them. How are they going to do that? It's going to be through the data, through the devices, through open integration and open platforms that will allow me to use all of the devices coming together to meet the sole purpose of my happiness.
We've not used the phrase yet, but everybody's using it, of course. Every advert that we see is now with AI, of course.
Yep.
We're talking data. You've mentioned it already, how important it is. So if we talk about smart buildings and home automation, how important is AI going to be as the driver rather than the hardware technology?
It's going to help us in two facets. One, designing the buildings so they could be smart and efficient and optimizing those designs. And two, administer the services in the building so these services are curated for the individual that occupies them. For example, you may have a preference of heating, cooling, lighting, and sound levels that is very different from mine. You may have a preference where your social style in the office is, hey, I would love to have a group lunch. Hey, I would love to go for drinks after work. I would love to have an ad hoc brainstorming session. And somebody else may say, you know what, lunch is my quiet time. I want to find that solace and have my lunch alone. Or for me, I best learn in a classroom style setting. And that's how the building will start to adapt to. Now, what you notice is the space hasn't changed, but the configuration of the space through the assets, devices, and technology has been adapted to suit the individual at need. That is what we're going to get into. That is the future.
And if we talk about the future and planning ahead, I was going to ask you for your top tips in understanding smart buildings. But what I'm actually going to ask you is, what are the right questions to ask when you're starting to specify a building?
So the basic question that everybody forgets, but should actually be the number one question is, do we understand the occupants of this building? Starting from there, the next question is, based on that, do we know what kind of experiences the occupants want? Use that experiences to break down the technology. Use that to then start defining the hardware, the software, the networking, the connectivity that is needed, and then figuring out how that gets implemented into the building as the building is brought up from the ground. This also applies to older buildings because we have a large number of existing buildings versus new ones. So looking at the existing buildings, changing them, not physically, but experientially, so that when a person walks into an older building, the building is as good as a new building in terms of engaging the person that comes inside.
Emmanuel, thank you so much for your insights. Really good to chat to you. We have so much more from over at ISE 2024 in Barcelona. So much more from the How to AV team about home automation and smart buildings. Join us soon at How to AV.
Thank you.